So thanks guys for being here. It's really great to connect and see a lot of new faces. I hope you've gotten a lot out of the last couple webinars. I'm sure you have, and I just love what so many people are doing right now. You know, these all came about for us because we had this conference plan that we had to push, and we wanted to offer something that was relevant and immediate, you know, rather than having this, we've been talking about this conference for almost a year and then now it's in September, but it just really felt like, what can we do now? You know, there has to be something now. And so I'm sure maybe others have said this, but that's kind of where these webinars originated and what's behind them. And it's funny because I am the last of the three, and when we decided to do this, it was, I don't know, at least a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago. Um, I don't know if you guys remember 5 weeks ago, but it feels like 5 years ago. Like, I don't remember like what was happening then, but I know it felt totally different than it feels now. Um, so I'd love to just keep this very open, very conversational. And what I'm finding in my groups and my courses and stuff that were ongoing from before all this started is there just feels to be like a bigger need or a bigger benefit in just coming together and sharing, you know, and knowing that everyone is in a completely different place every single day, like minute by minute, each of us is in a completely different place with things at times. And for sure, all of us. And what's so amazing to kind of watch in all this is that it's very universal. You know, you can hear of someone who's in a panic and really worried, or someone who has a sick family member, and other people who are loving this quiet and this slower pace, and they haven't been as personally affected by others. And there's something in every single one of those stories, you know, every experience that we all have, we can all relate to. And I think that it just points us back to the fact that we're all the same. We're all really one person, just living all these seemingly individual lives, separate lives, you know. But that's why coming together and sharing, and that's why things like poetry and writing and music and all of that impact us so much, because we're really one, and there are no feelings that we haven't felt or that we can't relate to in some way. So I think it's just so nice to see, especially in a time like this, because it's very, you know, it's very easy to just sort of be myopic and be where we are. And I'm worrying more than this person or less than this person. Is that okay? You know, and it's like, everything is so incredibly fluid. And we're all feeling all of the same stuff whenever we're feeling it. So for me, one of the things that I think is so incredibly helpful to talk about and share and look at when in times like this, and any times really, I talk about this all the time, but especially in times of uncertainty like this, is how, like, what we can sort of expect, in a sense, from our own minds, from our own psychology. Because not to put out this expectation and then confirm what we expect to see, but just to know what a mind is going to do, especially in a time like this. I find that it goes a really, really, really long way in helping people kind of just recognize that when their mind is doing that, and see that it isn't as real and as personal and as scary as it appears. So it's always about us. I think what's ultimately what we're going for is seeing who we really are, remembering who we really are, knowing that we're okay. But the barrier we all have at different times is this mind that's saying all kinds of stuff very loudly, with a lot of drama and a lot of emotion, especially when it doesn't know what's happening in life, when it's trying to figure things out. And so the more we can see, if that makes sense, the more we can see about what gets in the way, the more we get to hear our mind doing and saying what it's doing and saying, and we're less caught up in it. We're just less less thrown by it. And there's so much peace in that, because when we're less thrown by it, when you can hear your mind doing what minds do, and you can know, oh yeah, that's just what a mind would do right now, totally different, amazing experience. So what a mind will do, your mind has spent your entire life, its entire life, your entire life, trying to help you, trying to predict the future, trying to like narrating things that you already know. So saying like, okay, it's Thursday, here's what's going on today. Like, you don't need to say, your mind doesn't need to say that to you. You know what day it is, you'll figure it out, you'll walk through life and you'll do whatever you need to do. But our mind likes to kind of be the narrator, and it likes to tell us what's what and what's coming and who we are, the kind of person we are, and here's what's likely and here's what's not. And it, it just kind of has its little patterns and its little habits. And that's one of them, is it talks all the time and tries to kind of keep everything nice and secure and predictable for your benefit, so that you don't have to step into anything that's unknown, because God forbid we can't handle the unknown. Of course we can, and we do all the time. But to your mind, that's very scary territory, because your mind is this very linear little machine that wants to look out there and just, keep things in line. And I make the mind like its own person, but I just find it's helpful for illustration. It kind of just wants to know that it's valuable and it's needed, and don't worry, it's running the show and it's got everything under control. So when we have uncertainty, which we always do, by the way, but when your mind is kind of thrown for a loop and recognizes that there's a lot of uncertainty going on, like in a case like this, when there are all kinds of opinions and projections and predictions coming at you, and they all conflict, as they often do. And so your mind is kind of like, I can't do anything with this. I don't have anything to hold on to. What it'll sometimes do is just talk more. it'll make stuff up. And I know you've noticed this. Again, this has been happening forever, not just in the past couple months, but it'll make stuff up. It'll say, oh, here's what's probably going to happen, or here, if this happens, if A happens, I'll do B. If B happens, we'll do C. Like, it's always kind of planning and plotting and trying to put things out on a timeline for you, so that there are no surprises, because to your mind, that's kind of how we stay safe. I don't think this is new to anyone, but I think, man, it is huge to be reminded and to kind of see that literally everyone's mind is doing this all the time, especially right now. And it is just a machine working the way that machine works, doing what makes sense to that machine to do. And if we are caught up in the content of it, if we're in its plans and we're trying to figure along with it, and we're listening to it and hanging on it and saying, yeah, I do need a plan, and it is horrible to not know, and all of that kind of stuff, you're still going to be fine. You're still going to get through this, like we all are. Like, your ultimate security and safety is not really in question. Life is still moving on. We're still all just fine, but it might be a lot harder of an experience for you. It might be a little bit more of a roller coaster. You're going to get a little more caught up if you're believing all that stuff. So I just love to look at it and say, oh yeah, here's what a mind will do, because then it like pops out of the woodwork. We spot it and we're like, oh, I'm on to you. I see what you're doing here. I see how you're trying to secure everything in a way that can't be secured. But the best news in that is it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be secured. We don't need to know what's coming. It's only the machine in your head, that appliance in your head, that thinks you need to know what's coming. And it's just, again, it's just totally well-meaning and just trying to help. So when we really look at it, it's like we are in as much uncertainty now as we've always been in. We know as little about the future today as we did 2 weeks ago, as we did 2 years ago. We don't know anything, and we never did. The only difference is that 2 years ago, your mind was in a nice, normal range kind of hum, just narrating life, telling you that you knew what was coming, saying you're going to go to work next week and all of this is going to be just like it always was. And you'll spend the holidays with your family. And that's just how your mind talked 2 years ago. It wasn't right. I mean, it turned out to be right, maybe, but your mind couldn't predict the future then. It didn't save you from anything. It wasn't accurate necessarily. It was just basing its predictions on the past, and trying to help you feel safe and all that. But it didn't actually know anything, and we don't actually know anything now. So the difference now is your mind's just maybe thrown for a loop because it doesn't have that story to kind of cling to. But so again, kind of see these two things. There's like a mind that's just talking and predicting and all that, thinking it's doing us well, and it is doing us well in some ways. But then beyond all of that talking and planning, there's just us in life. Always has been. Absolutely no different. Again, us in life, absolutely no different right now in this moment versus yesterday, versus 4 weeks ago, versus 4 years ago. It's still just us in life. Seeing what we see moment to moment. That phrase, moment to moment, is so huge. If you really look at that, that's the only way that life ever plays out. And it's completely at odds with how your mind narrates things. Mind doesn't have any interest in moment to moment. It wants the moment out there, which is just how a mind talks. What is out there? What is that one? It's all conceptual, but man, it feels so real, and it is real in our heads. But beyond that, beneath it, there's just us being informed, getting everything we need when we need it, moment to moment to moment. And I think this time is such an amazing time to get to see that. What an opportunity we have that none of us would have chosen, but we didn't get to choose. What an opportunity now that we're in this, that we have to notice that distinction. Notice how there's this linear machine that's always trying to tell us what's coming, but then notice, hey, I didn't need that to begin with. Moment to moment to moment, I'm just doing what makes sense to do, just like I always have been. And it's been okay. We've all been okay. You might not have had all the circumstances and outcomes that you've wished for, but we're all okay. We always are. And so that distinction just so pops out. A few weeks ago, someone sent me an email with, she said, she's like, I thought I made up this word. And I was so proud of myself because it was the coolest, like most perfect word. And then she did a little Googling and found out that somebody else had kind of made up this word before. But the word was panicking. So planning plus panicking. You can plan, and you can plan from the moment. Now you're still planning for an out there moment, so you're making it up. Right? Your mind is still in there, literally. I mean, by definition here, plans are great. They're very helpful at times, but they're us making something up about a time that we're not in. So, and that doesn't mean don't do it. I'm a huge planner, right? Plan all you want. But there's planning, which happens from our mind, but informed by common sense, let's say, in a moment. And then there's panicking, which is all in our heads, way out into this moment, and us losing perspective, in a sense, losing that sense of, oh, I'm just here, making up what I think might happen, and it feels helpful to plan in this way. Panicking is when we kind of we kind of lose that, and we have the helmet on. The helmet is tight, and all we see is what's in that helmet. And it's like, oh no, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and get this together. And it was so I love that word. It's a really cool word, a very fitting word right now. But what really kind of struck me about when I just heard that word is like, look at all that we've been thrust into with not any time to plan or panic. And look at how well we've done. Now, I'm not talking about what governments could have done if they had seen things ahead of time or anything like that. I'm talking about us, just everyday average people living our lives moment to moment, navigating through this. I kind of feel, I don't know how you guys feel, but I kind of feel like, thank God we didn't know in January that this was going to happen in March. Because what would we have done? We would have crashed the stock market 2 months earlier. We would have bought out all the toilet paper 2 months earlier than we did. And we would have spent 2 months panicking. For what? You know, like planning, great. There might have been some extra planning in there, which may or may not have been helpful. But what we all know, every one of us has experienced this so much. What we all know is that events are so much worse and so much scarier in our imagination than they are when we live them. I think anyone who, and this may not be 100% true all the time, but very, very, very often I hear this from people, and I'm guessing you've all experienced it in some way, where you think that, you know, this is the worst that can happen. When that person dies, this will be the worst thing that can happen. When, you know, if I lose my job, that would be the worst thing that could happen. And then we just live in agony and we live in anxiety and we live in panicking and we live in our heads imagining it, even though it hasn't happened. And then it happens, and you know what people say? Wow, it did suck and I got through it. And it wasn't anything like my mind told me it was going to be for all those months or years leading up to it. And that has to show us something. I mean, again, like I just always think back to like moment to moment to moment. We are lived. We don't have to plan ahead and make all these decisions. And when we can't, that's great news. When we don't have the ability because we can't see a future, we don't know what to plan for. It's great news to know we're just lived, and life unfolds separate from our story about it. So let me go to you guys and see. I'd love to just hear how you're all doing, how you've been navigating things, what's been helpful, and if there's anything, you know, anything you want to share or anything you feel like you need a little support on. I'm happy to have those conversations. So again, you can raise your hand if you see where to do that in the participants area, or you can just unmute yourself, whatever's easiest. Roger, let me find you. If you can unmute yourself, go ahead, Roger.
Gathering.
There you go.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for leading this. I was a little bit late in, but I'm very happy to be here. I'm in Stockholm, and I was supposed to be. I'm pretty new in this 3P thing, but I've been in other spiritual circles for many years, and I'm working with in the addiction field. And I just want to share a little bit. I have felt very stable in some kind of understanding who I really am, but then something happened, like the 17th here in Sweden. Then we were asked if we are plus 70 to go home from work, and I did. And my wife was quite firm. I have had 5 bypasses and I have a pacemaker, so I'm certainly it's a good idea. But I felt, you know, like I should take care of my patients, and it was very hard for me to see that I needed to take care of myself rather than everybody else. And this has been something I'm working on, an old 12-stepper. And anyway, I went home, and then I went back just to check it out at work the 31st, and then I was not with the patient, but I was calling on the phone, and then I noticed all my colleagues, like 35 people, were very, very close together, and I got scared, you know. It was like unexpected fear in some kind of way, and it took me very quickly. Deep down, I know I'm not my feelings and not my thoughts and not my body either, but I was grabbed pretty harsh, and then I slept not well that night, and then 2 days later I got sick a bit. I had a sore throat, headache, not fever, but I thought, no, the mind, as you spoke, I was so sure not going to be having corona. I mean, I had 2 friends that are in ventilators. I made, as you said, the full panicking thing that it was a very long time ago. I had something like that happen to me, and I've been through quite a few things. So anyway, and I was sick for like a week, and I had a day of hard to breathe. I've been taking care of myself very well the 2 weeks before the 31st. And then this whole thing vanished, and I don't know if it was corona or not, but I'm feeling great now. But I so much hear what you say. What's your name? Amy. It's very true. And I thought, how could my thinking mind take me so far away from truth so quick? And now I feel back again. We meditate every day. We have to take walks, and I attend this thing with Bill Petit now. This whatever I call this seminar, and I got onto this thing because I was supposed to be in some addiction thing that was apparently cancelled. So I don't really know who I'm with here, but it was very nice to hear you, Amy, and I will keep my mouth shut now. But I just wanted to share a little bit. And right now I feel very fine, and I less obsessed. In the beginning of this corona, I was obsessed being a medical doctor, to find out do we do the right thing here in Sweden, or we are crazy. We had a very loose, like social distance. And I got all these ideas, should I do something? And I was kind of obsessing to send out things and looked at the news too much. And now we have my wife and me, who's also into this spiritual path, you can say, for many years. We just decided to concentrate on ourselves. We cannot take care of the whole of 10 million people in Sweden here and do what we can in our surroundings and not watch the news all the time. Just do it half an hour a day, meditate, take long walks, take care of each other, eat well. And now I feel great, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. It's so funny. That's one of the biggest things that it's so hard when suddenly it looks like, I'm exaggerating for you, but like you're responsible for figuring out whether Sweden's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, but in our own little ways, even when it's like, oh no, I have to help. For me, it was like, I have to talk some sense into my mom because she's not doing the right things, right? Like as soon as we get like that and we're trying to fix it for someone else or think of these big, huge things, it's like we get this rush of feedback. Physically, emotionally, we get this feedback that says, whoa, that's way bigger than you're ever going to do. Like hang back a minute. You can't save the country. You can't save your own mother, and then just like you're saying, it's beautiful how it just sort of wakes us up. And then you just come back to, hey, let me take care of myself. And knowing that you taking care of yourself is taking care of everyone else, because we are all the same. And if you're going to have a great idea that's helpful, man, it's going to come by what you're doing now rather than the panicking and the fear. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. That's great.
Raise my hand.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi. I've been real privileged to know about the principles since 1980, so I've been around a long time. Yet when they told me that the internet might go down, I had some tears to shed. So we're never immune. It's never going to go away completely. We continue to learn every day.
Yeah.
We're always the student.
Yeah. And it's really, I don't know, I think it's kind of nice that way. It's sort of nice to see, whoa, yeah, I can still get really freaked out and really caught up in things, you know. It's a very human feeling.
But it's wonderful to acknowledge that there will never be an end to learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and that even if there was an end, what our minds want to make up that the end to learning would be that we don't panic or we don't feel a certain, you know, there's this huge range of amazing like human experience, and when you chop off this end of it, that's when you've reached the end. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. That's got to be a mind making that stuff up. So there's no end, and there's definitely no end of feeling the range. And if anything, I think that range widens. You know, we get to feel even more and deeper and more nuanced things, and just know that it's experience. It's not us. It's not going to kill us. And so our world gets to be bigger instead of smaller, which is really nice. Trina.
Let's see.
You're unmuted.
I'm unmuted. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to say thank you to Amy. I got your email this morning, Ask Amy, and it was, why is my thinking so much more negative than my husband's?
Yeah.
And it was just like, I felt like I asked you the question because my husband and I have been married for 35 years, and he was raised Buddhist, and I was raised in another country, and I was raised here in the United States by a very negative mother and father, and every time we go for walks every morning, and you know, we'll talk about stuff, and he'll always say, like, why do you think about it so negatively, you know? And I realize that I'm doing it, but I always say, I just wish I could live in your mind, because I would love to see things the way you see it and from your perspective. And I just felt like what you had to say today on that Ask Amy video was just very helpful to me, to your metaphor about, you know, cooking stuff in the kitchen and using whatever you have in the kitchen to make a dish. And, you know, everyone is going to come at it in a different approach, but it's more about, you know, the kind of the final product. And so anyways, I just wanted to say thank you. It was really helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad it was helpful. It is. It's funny. I think there's a thing that happens. I might be just making this up, but I think a lot of times people who would describe themselves as negative thinkers, or people that are just in their heads a lot, like kind of end up with people who aren't. And there has to be some intelligence behind that. And there's this nice balance, because, you know, the people who sometimes see everything rosy and don't think much, like they could do with a little bit of our, like, you know, thinking and structure around some things. So I love just like hearing about those pairings. But I just was picturing you guys walking and you saying, you know, I would love to see what it's like in your head. And in a sense, like, I mean, you can't literally, but you kind of get to. And isn't that awesome, you know, that you get to just have these kind of discussions with him about the fact that you see it shows up in your head this way, and it shows up in his head that way. But what's really cool about that is obviously neither of those are the truth. I mean, if there's a truth, you'd have to agree on it. It'd have to come together in some way. So even though you know, might wish it showed up in your head a little more positively at times, it keeps getting to like show you that how it's showing up in your head is just how it's showing up in your head. It's not that you're a negative person. It's not that, and it's not even that you have to be bogged down by that experience of negativity, because the more you see, oh, this is just how my mind gives it to me. You know, these are the ingredients I have in my kitchen. So most of my meals come out with this, I don't know, most of my meals come out as some type of curry because I have a lot of curry in my kitchen. Doesn't mean anything about me. Doesn't mean I'm destined to eat curry for the rest of my life. It's just what happens to be there. It's really, really nice to see that. It helps us see that we aren't any of that anyway. Thanks, Trina. I'm glad that was helpful. One of the things I think in this whole time that I've seen a lot of people take a lot of benefit from, and this doesn't sound like a great thing necessarily, but I think it really is and can be, is we're getting to see just how much we took for granted and just how much we were attached to and didn't know that we were attached to it. So and I don't mean that in that we're human. We're all attached to things that we don't realize we're attached to. Somewhere in there we have things that we think or that we reach for or count on or whatever in our minds that give us a feeling of security, and they don't do it, but we've kind of made those connections in our heads. And so we can go through life when everything's easy and flowing along and just be blind to that, and that's okay. I think that's probably great that we're blind to a lot of things, because we don't need to be aware of every single thing all the time. We have other stuff to do. So we can go through life like that. But then in a time like this, when suddenly you can't just run to the store for something, or you can't spend the holiday with your family, or you can't do this or that, or something that you rely on is not available to you anymore. It really is like, oh, it's such an opportunity to say, wow, look at how my mind thinks that thing brings me something, or that person gives me something that I don't have. This situation I can't be in, hugging people, having close physical contact with people, that gives you something. Now, as human beings, oh my gosh, of course we think it does. And of course it does, in part because we believe it does so much. And that's sort of how, that's just how we've grown up and been so conditioned. But to just notice that too, to see it with a little bit of distance, how the stories that our mind goes to, oh, because I can't be close, because we can't do things this way, because of all that, something in me is lacking. And when we're really, or like a feeling in me is lacking, when we really look at that more deeply, that can't possibly be. Can't possibly be. It has to be that back when we could hug people we didn't live with, we would hug them and our mind would open up and relax and we'd feel all kinds of great stuff. But that great stuff was never coming from the hug. It wasn't coming from their arms. It wasn't coming from them. It was within us. Our mind just got out of the way. Our mind said, ooh, we're hugging. And it shuts up for a minute and then we feel us. And our mind doesn't have that right this minute, but it was never coming from that thing, whatever that thing is. And I just feel like this is such a cool opportunity to see a lot of that, Again, I'm not talking about getting really analytical and all of that kind of stuff, but just noticing what comes up for you around that. Gary.
You've unmuted me. Thank you. Hi, Amy. It's nice to meet you. And I love your book, by the way. I've given it to a lot of clients and everybody seems to love it. It's such a clear, lovely explanation. I'm really intrigued by what you're saying about the opportunities that are coming up, because I really started to give that some thought the last couple of days. And it occurred to me that we're seeing previews of many possible futures right now in conditions that have been imposed upon us because we're all on lockdown around the world. I mean, there's lower air pollution than any time in living memory. There's less traffic. People are getting a taste of what it might be like to work from home, because I think a lot of companies will, after this, just go to working from home. They might have conference rooms or something like that. But the idea of going to an office is going to be, if not, it won't be completely killed, but this will change everything. And this idea that I've thought so many times when disasters hit, that we're all in the same boat has never been quite so evident. All the borders are breaking down, the borders of countries, the borders that we impose upon ourselves between us and somebody else. We really are in the same boat because everybody's susceptible to this. It's not like we can say, well, those poor people halfway around the world that this is happening to. It's happening to us. But the ability to test drive these possible futures, I find really intriguing, because these are things that were said to be complete impracticalities. Yeah. Oh, seeing the air, being able to see a long way in Beijing or New Delhi? No, that'll never happen. Well, here it is. We get to look at it and say, is there something about this that we can keep? Is there something about this? Is there some way we can have this going forward? The same with less traffic. The same with, a lot of the changes that we're kind of enjoying. I'm in upstate New York in a very rural place. And so and I'm on Zoom all the time. So my life isn't that different. My wife and I are, we live by ourselves. So our lives aren't that different, but I am beginning to feel the absence of the close contact with people, the physical contact with people. And, I think hugging might be a historical artifact now. I don't know. I hope to God it's not. But I mean, there's so many things that are going to change, but there are these wonderful opportunities. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, it's tough because our mind is it just wants to stay with what we know at times, and what's familiar but this was so great this way, but I think we're all feeling at least a bit, if not a lot of exactly what you're pointing to. I definitely am as well. Like, wow, stripping all this away. Maybe it was shocking and extreme and dramatic. It still is, but maybe that's what had to happen to kind of just open up so much that we were, I think about, I don't know, back in 2007, I remember reading like Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and all of that. Back then they were saying, why are we going into offices still? Look how long ago that was. And yet nothing really changed. And now I think you're absolutely right. Like, office culture and all the money and energy and everything that's spent on all of that, for what? So much of that's going to change. So I look at things like that where it's like, we've kind of known this for quite a while. Obviously, we've known we're hurting our planet for a very long time. And I don't know, it's really kind of exciting to think that maybe this bigger intelligence is just saying, hey, here's how this is going to go down. Here's where the change is going to come from.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're so right. I think it had to be a wake-up call this big to really start shaking things up. But what I would not like to see is just sort of getting past this and going, whew, well, we dodged a bullet that time, and not that many of us died, and let's go back to work as usual. I mean, we just can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I don't know, it's just my opinion, but like, I feel like when we're in our heads, all we want is and you hear people talking like this, I just want some normalcy back. And I want some, and it's like, what they want is not normalcy. Like right now in this moment, it's normal. What's normal? That's a judgment. It's a thought, right? What they want is what their mind was comfortable with before. So there's for sure, I think, going to be a mad rush to normal and the good old days and all that. And I think I'm with you. I hope we can calm down, and I think we will eventually, and kind of take the good from this and let some change happen.
Well, we can pretend that we're not in the unknown so much of the time. We can pretend that we're not, but we always are. And this is just the dope slap that reminds us of it. The earth has sort of been taken, or all the people, and, gotten a little of this across the face. So it's like, you can't ignore it this time. This is the real wake up call. Let's look at different ways of doing things. Let's really look at them.
Yeah, we'll see. And for each of us individually, though, in our lives, it's a great opportunity for that too, because I think it's like we were saying with Roger, we can jump up to how society should do things, and that'll play out however it plays out. But even just on that different level, that personal level, to see like, wow, what's been working for me in the last month? Like, what do I love about this? I want to make change in my life, because we have a little more say there.
That's a great way to put the question. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot for me personally that I'm loving so much about. So I talked to my 90-year-old grandmother last week, and she's just like, I've been telling you guys this forever, all your damn technology, and you're running all over, and you have your kids in 5 different sports, and I've been telling you that's not the way to live your life, and look at. You know, I'm just like, I kind of agree with it. I didn't tell her. I'm like, you might have been kind of right about some of that, you know, and at the same time, I love being busy and being in the world, and that my kids get all these opportunities and we get to travel. We all do. Those things we do love, but I mean, for sure, like that balance, I think each one of us is getting to see that and evaluate it for ourselves. Like, okay, where was 90-year-old grandma right? And where was I not right, but like, what are we going to pick and choose? Where's that new balance going to be? I really hope and know in some ways for my family, it isn't going to be exactly where it was before. And it probably isn't going to be where grandma says it should be, but there will be some settling in the middle, because man, it's been amazing to just have my kids home every single night, and to the time that we've had together and the things that they're doing and learning. And it's very easy to freak out that they don't have their school lessons and all of that. But man, they're putting together puzzles, they're doing things, they're baking cookies from scratch, and like they're showing us how to do it. And it's, and trust me, I'm not saying it's, you know, this Walton family over here all the time. They're also having their meltdowns and missing their friends and all that at times too. But I don't know, it is really cool. Like we get to just shake it all up and then throw the dice again and see where things land. Joe.
Hi, Amy. Good job, Amy. I love what you're saying.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I love what Gary just said about this big slap across the face, and what Lynn said earlier too about how we keep learning this over and over again. And what struck me when you were just talking, Amy, and Gary was talking about, you know, all the possibilities. You know, I've written a few books about slowing down to the speed of life and slowing down to the speed of love and the speed trap, and mostly because I came from an extremely workaholic, frenetic background. I remember hearing Louis Anderson, the comedian, saying, people say I'm fat, he says, but to me, I'm skinny. Compared to, you should see the rest of my family. That's fat, he said. So to me, it looked like I was also, I'm thinking I'm doing really good. Well, it was that way for me because I learned the principles 1980, 40 years ago, and my life really changed dramatically. My mind slowed down so much, and I started seeing things so much more clearly. And so for me, it was like, wow, this is great. I love it, you know, and I'm able to teach other people this. And then the coronavirus hit and lockdown. And I realized I was like an addict having to go through detox because I, like you, Amy, and like so many of us, you know, I travel a lot. I'm very active socially, writing books, doing this, doing that, you know, very active life still at 71 years old. And I realized just how little I had changed from what I thought I had. It was like for me, another big wake up, like, wow, go to your room, Joe, and read your books, you know? And so I love that about this, that, you know, there is no end to the depth of knowing this, even though we've all realized a lot, but there's always more and deeper. It's like really good food if you really take the time to taste it and experience it rather than just gulping it. You really experience all the flavors in it and all the taste. And that's what this has been for my wife and I. It's just been, you know, we've had our moments, believe me, like everyone, but for the most part, we've really enjoyed just the quiet and the reflection. And wow, there's so much room to just have time to do whatever we want. And I'm going to take that with me.
Yeah.
If this all changes, you know, I want more of this. This is even better. So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, me too. I love that. It's funny though how like you came across the principles and you did slow down a lot, I'm sure, but then it's like we kind of find ourselves in this new normal, and then you get kind of adjusted to that, you know, you like adapt to that, and then something else has to come slap. So this is like your principles again 40 years later, like another huge thing that takes you another level in. And
yeah,
it's really like, I think we're just sort of like that. We kind of want to go back to where we were, where, you know, even after years and years, our mind still wants to kind of go back there, but it's so cool that we keep getting these opportunities to see and to realize, wow, there's even slower and even better it can always be.
And I really love what Gary said too, you know, just to kind of open ourselves up to seeing that how differently we can all work together, we can work differently, you know, just what's possible. This is going to take a whole new layer off of what's possible. What we thought was a limit is now just a made up limit. And so we need futuristic thinkers like you, Gary, that can kind of talk about those pictures and point out what we've already done. And I just think there's lots of extraordinary good that can come from all of this. That'll be very healing to a lot of our institutions and ourselves. You know, it's always up to us, of course, but it's possible.
Yeah. What else? Any other things you're seeing through this time yourself that you want to share, or questions? Beth, let me find you.
I'm Beth, and I've been around this conversation for about 3 years now, so a relative newbie, introduced via Nicola Bird. And I think one of the things I still struggle with a little bit, and I'm just interested in how you explain this to people, is when we say we are all okay. And I understand there's different levels here, because there's our physical experience of life and there's what's happening in the world, and the way we experience that is through our thinking of it. But I'm just wondering how that sits when people really do experience something that is real in the physical world, like homelessness, like hunger, like illness. And I understand that the event happens and you put meaning on it via your thought, but those things are real because we do live in a physical and a real world. And I'm just curious about the we are all okay.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if you could say a little more about that.
Yeah. I think the way I see it is it's bigger still than an event happens and then our thoughts give it meaning. I mean, that's true on some level, but I think it's way bigger than that even. Yes, like events happen, we get sick or lose our jobs or whatever. But I guess I see all those events as like events and circumstances and things that happen. They aren't events. They're inherently neutral. They aren't like, oh, this bad thing happened and now my mind can think about it and give it meaning. Like, again, on some level, that's sort of true, or that's our experience of it. But it's more that nothing is anything before our thinking comes in and gives us an experience of it. Homelessness is not a bad thing. It's just a word. It's just a label. The experience of homelessness will come from moment to moment thinking. So it's a bit, and I don't know if that helps at all or even sounds different from what you said, but everything that we can possibly experience is creative. It is not like we're seeing it and then putting our spin on it. It's far bigger than that, I think. And I think what I always kind of go back to, what really kind of helps is, again, what I was saying earlier about that moment to moment experience, moment to moment, like life living us versus our mind narrating things. In the mind's narration of things, being sick on a ventilator, being homeless, like bad things happening, that's not going to be okay unless your mind maybe gets distracted and stops thinking about it. Then maybe you'll feel okay for a minute. But that's up at this like conceptual narrator level of it, you know, like I'm sick with coronavirus on a ventilator and I might not live. When your mind's telling that story, it's not going to be a good one. But the actual experience, the moment to moment to moment, like life is still living that person. We don't know what they're experiencing. That one came to mind for me because I have a friend whose mother is in a hospital, like in another state. She can't see her, as is the case for all these people. She's on a ventilator, and her mom got on this ventilator, got to see a picture of her granddaughter on the phone or FaceTime or whatever. And this little smile came on the corner of her mother's mouth, you know? And it's like, wow, in that moment, she's still a woman on a ventilator in a hospital bed, according to the narrator. That's still the circumstance of it. But in that moment, she was just a human being smiling at her granddaughter. And I think it's easy to, even as I say that, it can sound very cliche and like, oh, that's fine, but who lives at that level? She's going to pop out of that moment and find herself in a hospital bed, but not necessarily. I mean, there's so much to see at those kind of two different levels. And if this kind of conversation has done anything for me, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of that, like, yeah, my mind will always generalize and judge, but man, anything is possible in any circumstance, in any moment. And just knowing that that's the case, I guess that's to me what it means, that we're always okay. We're always safe. We're always free, because anything can show up. And even when the worst is showing up, we have a bad feeling. Well, that's a feeling. It's not going to, it's going to change. It's going to move. Does that?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying is different. And I think I'm still sort of stuck a bit at the conceptual level. And that might be something, just about the longer you stick around it, the more it starts to settle and the more you start to see. And it's early days for me, but that helps. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And don't, I mean, you're not like unlike anyone else. Like, of course, as human beings, we look at all those things and say they're bad. I don't want them. I won't be happy if I have them. But we have so much evidence personally, and everyone does, of that not being as cut and dry as it truly is. For me, one of my favorite examples of that is just being tired. When people have so many, I work with a lot of people with habits, but a lot of times sleep is impacted, and people have such stories about sleep, and such hell and heaven on earth. Like, 8 hours of sleep is heaven on earth and 3 hours of sleep is hell on earth. And like, it's just such a big thing. And I don't know, I just think there's so much conditioning in that. And even when you get 3 hours of sleep and you're not feeling great for a portion of the following day, there are moments when you have no clue how much sleep you got, and you're just in that moment and you're just fine and you're laughing at jokes and, but then your mind will remember, oh yeah, you only got 3 hours of sleep, and bring you right back. So it's a little more of a minor example than those cases you brought, but I think it's just a cool illustration to see, like, that's kind of how we work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's definitely a time where I know Barbara and Christian talked about this a little last week. Habits, addictions, all of that are different. Like where, you know, if we're feeling less comfortable than we were feeling a month ago, when we feel uncomfortable, minds talk about wanting to add things to help us feel differently. And sometimes now, especially, like those things aren't available to us the way that they were. That's part of what I'm hearing from a lot of the people I talk with. Is like just the more minor everyday, not necessarily minor, but the everyday things that we did to distract ourselves from ourselves aren't available and aren't around. And again, I just think, yeah, it's one of those things it's just another slap in the face, but it's going to feel horrible and terrifying initially. But wow, what an opportunity to see that you didn't really need that to begin with, and it was never doing what it appeared to be doing to begin with. I would never saying, you know, the way to go is cold turkey and burn all the boats and just, you know, like that's the way to go. There's no one way to go through anything. It's always moment to moment to moment. But I've talked with a lot of people that are forced to go that way because they can't get what they used to get to distract themselves. And it's not all bad. It's not, you know, it's turning out really great in some cases because they're saying, man, it's a tough couple weeks, but wow, I never put myself in a situation to not have that substance or that habit, that thing in my back pocket. And now I'm forced into this and I'm seeing how much I thought I needed something that I clearly don't need. So again, even just in terms of addiction and all of that, it's a great opportunity. Well, thank you guys for your listening. Thanks for everything that you shared. And yeah, it was really great to talk. It's really great to just even connect like this, our sort of new normal for right now. But I love that we're all still kind of coming together and looking toward this. And obviously that's not going to change anytime soon. This is as good a time as any. So thanks so much for your time and for being here, and stay healthy and well. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you.